Hi, I'm Daniel Chan from UNSW Sydney. Welcome to another adventure in pure mathematics. One of the most important principles in calculus is the passage from sums to integrals. And what I want to do in this video is to up this principle to the passage from direct sums of vector spaces, in a simple example, to direct integrals. Okay, so to kick off this video, I want to talk about the main theorem of vector spaces. And because we'll be working later with things from analysis, we'll just work over the complex numbers. So suppose we're given any vector space V over the complex numbers, then one thing that we know that it has a basis. So suppose the basis is indexed by the set I, and it's given by the elements xi. An equivalent way of saying this, and this is rather nice, is that this V is isomorphic to the direct sum of C times xi, okay? So this C times xi is isomorphic to the one-dimensional vector space C, okay? So this theorem is useful because it breaks down this vector space into these very simple constituents. Okay, and this is true for any vector space V, and it follows from the axiom of choice. So it does use that axiom of choice. And as we know, it's very useful, particularly when this basis is finite. But often when this is not finite, we want to use infinite linear combinations rather than just finite linear combinations. So what do we do? Okay, so hopefully you've seen in your analysis classes the notion of a Hilbert space where you want to play around with infinite linear combinations. So just to set some notation, let me just remind you how things work here. We'll work over Hilbert spaces over the complex numbers. So we consider a Hilbert space this H here. And remember that it has a little bit more data than just the vector space structure, okay? It also has an inner product. Okay, so that takes pairs V and W inside this Hilbert space H, and it spits out this scalar that I'll use this angle brackets to denote. And to allow you to take infinite sums, you need this H to be complete with respect to some sort of norm, and the norm is given by this inner product. So how is that? If you want the norm of V, it's given by, you take the inner product of V with itself, and you take the square root of that. So a Hilbert space has this extra data of this inner product, and this inner product gives you this norm and hence this topology, and you can talk about completion, and so you can talk about infinite sums. Okay, well, in this playlist, we'll mainly deal with separable Hilbert spaces. So just to remind you, if you've forgotten, separable means that it has a countable basis, although often that's not the basis that one wants to work with. Okay. So firstly, let's sort of do the reverse of what's going on here. Here you take a vector space and you can find, or you know there exist bases, and so that gives you a decomposition. You can go in the reverse order. If you just have some sort of a set, you can build a vector space out of that. And in fact, you can even build an inner product space. And let's just see how that works. So given a finite set X, you can abstractly build an inner product space, even a Hilbert space that has this set X as an orthogonal basis. Okay, so the way that you'll do that is firstly, what do you do? So firstly, we'll denote this inner product space with Cx, and it's just a set of all formal C linear combinations of elements of X, so things of this form. So this is just a formal sum which will equal the actual sum once things are all defined. Of course, this is a vector space. You can add and scalar multiply elements inside here. And the only other thing that we need to make it an inner product space is the inner product. And so if you're given two of these sums, okay, you define the inner product in the usual way. So remember, in this inner product here, this is a Hilbert space, so it means that firstly, it's not symmetric when you switch the order of the vectors, then it becomes a complex conjugate. And the other thing is it'll be linear in only one of the variables as a result. And depending on your convention, it will be either linear in the first variable or the second variable. Here I've chosen it to be linear in the second variable. So in that case, the natural way to define the inner product here will be the sum of, you take the coefficients here, you take the conjugate of that, and multiply by the corresponding coefficients over here, the beta x's, and then you sum that. And that's going to give you an inner product space that makes these, basically, if you make all the coefficients 0 except for one of them as 1, so that gives you the elements of this x sitting inside this cx, okay, then these elements inside here are orthogonal elements inside this vector space, this inner product space. Okay, so what's the question here? So what happens if you want to try to generalize this to the case where x is infinite, okay? And the thing you would want to do is you want to replace the sum, okay, with an integral. So that's the basic sort of principle in calculus that you want to use. So let's just try to do this naively and see where we get, okay? We're going to take this construction and just replace sum with integral, okay? So the way we'll do it is a little bit in a couple of steps. So the answer is going to, in step first step rather, is this sum. Okay, I won't write it as an integral of this, okay? So what I'm going to do instead is basically, if you have an infinite sum where this sums over an infinite set, so the little x ranges over an infinite set x, okay? The better way to write this actually as a function. The only thing you care about in this sum, the only data that's involved is what are all the coefficients, okay? So we're just going to replace this data of this formal finite linear combination that we had over here, okay, with the data of its coefficients. So it's a function alpha. So here it would be x goes to the alpha subscript x, but as a function you can write it as alpha of x, okay. Okay, so that's something that certainly you can do, okay. And then the next step is what you do with the inner product. So here is where you replace the sum with an integral. And it seems easy enough. This alpha subscript x got replaced with alpha of x, okay, and you can take the complex conjugate of that, okay, and then if you have another function, beta of x, what you want to do is you take the integral, and now the question becomes, well, what does it mean, the integral, okay, of this thing if x is just some sort of a set? And of course, now you see that actually to define this direct integral, you need a little bit more data. You need some more input data. So what you need to do is you need to be able to make sense of this, okay? So this is just some complex function on x, okay? So you need to equip x with some sort of a measure. And the type of measure we'll be interested in this playlist are positive sigma finite countably generated measures. And let's give it the name mu. Okay, so if you haven't done much measure theory, okay, don't worry about it. It's just basically a way so that you can talk about integrals like this. Okay, so let's try to see how we generalize what's going on here, okay, essentially. So here you have some sort of a set, finite set x, and you're going to build an inner product space, okay, which is a direct sum of essentially the copies of C, one for each element of this set. And now what you want to do is you want to take the direct integral of these copies of C, but there are more of them, okay? There's an infinite number of them. So you want to take a direct integral of these one-dimensional vector spaces, Cx. And we needed a bit more input data for that. We needed a measure mu on x as well. And I hope you can kind of guess where we're getting at to here. So hopefully you've seen this in your analysis courses. You end up with the Hilbert space L2 x mu. Okay, so just to remind you what this is, okay, it's, well, firstly, you start with this function f from x to c. And it has to satisfy a certain condition, okay, so that you can talk about norms, okay, and so it's not, its values aren't too large. So what you do is that you want the integral of the modulus squared of f of x, okay, that integral to be finite. And the other thing, of course, that you'll need is that, well, two functions, okay, if they only differ on a set of measure 0, then they should be regarded as the same. Okay, so we put an equivalence relation on this. So f is equivalent to g if looking at all the points x where f and g differ, okay, the measure of that is equal to 0. Okay, so just to remind yourself of some notation and things you hopefully would have seen before, and to see how this notion of a direct integral, where we take a direct integral of copies of c now, okay. So the simple example here is little L2, okay, and this will correspond to just sequences, AI, of complex numbers. AI is in C, but not arbitrary sequences. You want the sums of the square moduli to be finite. And this basically corresponds to this setup here. It's direct integral. Okay, your set is the infinite set of natural numbers n. And the measure mu here is just, well, for each of these natural numbers I, the measure of I is equal to 1. That's how you weight it, okay? And of course, that's still a discrete sort of measure. And you can also look at more continuous sort of examples which more resemble something that you would see in integral. So if you actually had, for example, an open interval, or closed interval rather, of the real line, and you say put the Lebesgue measure on that, you can look at L2 of that. So this basically shows you that this notion of L2x mu, you can think of this as a direct integral of copies of the one-dimensional vector space C, okay? And how many of these copies of C do you have? You have one copy of C for each element inside this set X, but you also need to put this extra input data of this measure. If you want to take more general sorts of direct integrals, where rather than just looking at one-dimensional vector spaces, you look at more general sort of vector spaces or Hilbert spaces, then there are versions of this notion of direct integral as well. But this is the one that you've already seen, hopefully, and I've basically shown you that it arises as in this rather interesting way. I hope you enjoyed this adventure in pure mathematics.